What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So I went to go drop this truck off because I scheduled it. I've had a fuel issue. Basically, the sending unit we think is kind of like deteriorated over time on this guy, where when it has a quarter tank, it would like gurgle for fuel, kind of like you almost had an air pocket in it when you change the fuel filter. If you've ever changed your fuel filter, jumped in it and just went down the road and it was like you didn't like let it idle and like work the air out of the lines. Then it started doing it at a half a tank, and the solution was always just fill it up, top it off. Then it started doing it at 3/4 of a tank, and I'm like, okay. So anyway, I talked to my technician guy, and he's like, Trav, my truck, my 7.3 is doing the exact same thing. He's like, it's your sending unit. Anyway, that was a conversation 3 weeks ago. We still haven't been able to source a sending unit. In addition to that, I am building a alternative fuel refinery, for the lack of a better term, at my property, and I need cinder blocks. Like I need to set up some equipment, and I want to set it up off the ground, and I want to put it up on cinder blocks so that I have access underneath the equipment for sweeping and all that type of thing, all that stuff that you may need to do. I cannot obtain cinder blocks, so this part for this truck I haven't been able to get for 3 or 4 weeks, all over. Like I'm actually thinking about like I should go get like a junked parts truck and like pull it out of that. Like I think that we're at that spot in like in the decline where it's like, if you want to keep a truck running, you should have like a parts truck or maybe two like laying around. Like I don't like the junkyard model, but like it seems like that might be the way to go until we like can cross this Rubicon to where like we could 3D print our stuff, or like locally there might be a massive like warehouse in town that has all the printers and like can manufacture you what you need. And I think that that's going to be the future. I don't know if that'll be like done in your home office. I think it'll more likely probably be done at like what looks like an Amazon facility, but they'll 3D print you what you need, or manufacture. Maybe they have tap and die machines. Maybe they have water jet cutting machines. Like have all that stuff, and you go there and pay for the time. Like, okay, I'm gonna rent this space for X amount of time to manufacture these parts. And it's a little futuristic, but I think that that's where we have to go from here. But anyway, we're in that spot where it's like, let's say that I was doing this for like a customer where I couldn't keep this truck running. This truck was not operational. Like, I couldn't run it. Like if the problem gets really bad, I'll just not be able to run this truck. Fortunately, I have 2 other trucks. But in the case where, 10 years ago I had 1 truck, like what would you do? You're just kind of out. You've got to go do some economic activity, go get a job somewhere, or something that you don't need a truck for. Likewise, like if I needed those things, like if I was building an outdoor kitchen or something like that, and I needed these cinder blocks for a client, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like that's just revenue. That's just not going to happen. I've actually had jobs this year where I was waiting on parts for the dump truck. I needed the dump truck for the project. I couldn't get dumpster services, and we just lost the jobs. Like the clients canceled on us, which happens. But it was like a lost revenue. Like that's 10 grand in revenue, like or whatever it may be. Like that's never coming back. If so you can see how these things are like starting to like stack. In addition to that, like people are paying $5.29 here for diesel fuel, which I guess isn't outrageous, but it's and I still think it's going much higher. But in the short term, it looks like it's going lower. But it's all these things that are adding up. It's basically just adding up in a loss of economic activity, where the economic activity wants to occur. Like I want to pay my tech to drop my fuel tank, clean my fuel tank, put a new sending unit in there. While you're at it, change the fuel lines, all that stuff. I want to pay for that service. I can't. We delayed it actually a month, like a week ago, because his techs were out with sickness, and he was like, yeah, I don't know when these guys are going to be back. I've got one guy, my diesel guy, he's out. And that's the guy that works on your rig. I'm like, I know, like that's the guy I want to work on my rig. So these things are like adding, they're stacking on top of each other. And I don't know where exactly how all this ends, but I do know that it's not, when you have a loss of economic activity like that, it doesn't end super well. And that's kind of like the point that I'm driving home here in a roundabout way, is like that economic activity will never come back. And it's weird because it's just stacking on top of stacking on top of stacking. Like eventually, if you can't get the truck fixed, you can't stay in business. If you can't get the raw materials, you can't do business activities. If you can't do that, then you can't pay certain other costs. If you can't pay certain other costs, then you can't pay, and it's a cascading effect. Whether it's, trickle down or drip up, it doesn't really matter where in the supply chain it's causing these issues. It's still causing these issues. And I think that the point that I want to leave with you in this video is like, these are caused by political elites. Like these are not natural problems that are occurring in the world or the economy. These are problems because like that person that wanted to be class president in high school that you didn't like back then, now they're like, they're more polished in their craft of like corruption and being a piece of shit, and they have military power, and like we're still at that spot where like military power like still like yields to like whatever the heck these people say behind their desk. We haven't gotten to that spot where like the military is like, wait a second, we have the real power, you're just a person behind a desk, where are the ropes? Like we haven't gotten to that spot yet, and the average guy hasn't identified that the problem is the political elites and the political elite class, and them and the bankers are one entity. Like the bankers and it's the exact same thing. So the only peaceful solution is to leave the system and go like elsewhere, but you have to do so in an economic fashion where you have control of your supply chain. This is why I'm bullish on farming moving forward. Like I just think, you can have a lot of the inputs for farming you can control, and some of the things that you can't control, like tractor, machinery, you can rent in. I know that'll be somebody's problem, but it'll be like United Rentals' problem or whatever. I know that's a far example. I do think that we get beyond this period of history. I think that we get back to a sound money. I think that we get to like a point where like decentralization and technology being exponential in growth puts us into a place like called the singularity. I think that those things can occur, but I think that we're in this like little period where we could we've gone up the mountain enough, we've kind of come down a little bit, and it's like, are we gonna fall off this mountain and like revert back to the 1800s? Kind of like if Germany can't get energy this winter, do they just go back to burning coal and wood? Like, do they do that? Like are they allowed to do that? Will their political elites allow them to do that? Or do we ascend and nuclear energy and diesel electric and we ascend instead of I don't know. It's a really weird situation. It seems like the political elites who've never run anything, never run a business, never run a payroll, never done anything. It seems like they know what's best and that everybody continues to yield to it. But the absolute solution is these are just people behind desks. That are the person in high school that you hated then, and that's the person now. It's just an older version of this person with more power, and it is not the optimal way to set up a society whatsoever at all, but that's how we're set up. So until next video, guys, I'll see you down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts, and I've got a great book I should do a review on called Chaos Theory, which is basically about how an anarcho capitalist society functions. There's also a great book that's worth a read called The Not So Wild West, America's Experiment in Anarchy. And if you think that the 1800s out west, pre-Civil War time, was this crazy gunslinging type of situation, you might want to look closer. It was very, very organized, extremely decentralized, extremely peaceful, and there was absolutely no federal or state authority whatsoever. It's very interesting how people are smart enough and intelligent enough to organize themselves socially to a spot where they are able to develop the state of California, having started 150 years behind the state of New York, and they surpass them in only a 50-60 year period of time. It's really interesting how 150 year history you get to this point, and then a 50-60 year period you surpass it substantially. And that's the gold rush, that's the development of California, that's the whole thing in the late 1800s there. And it was America's experiment in anarchy. I just put it out there, float it, because this is kind of the time where people are going to discuss political structures. Does it make sense that you go to a ballot box and vote for the structure that we inherited? Or should we organize ourselves in a different manner? And I think that we need to open that Pandora's box. And I think that starts with the money. That starts with the unit of account. How do we trade amongst each other? If you offer a service and I offer a good, Do we involve a third-party gangster called like a politician or a bankster? Or do we just interact with a piece of gold or Bitcoin or silver or anything that you and I deem valuable? Why do we involve that third party in our transactions? That's where it all starts, and that's where it's all going to eventually collapse to, and that's where the solution's going to be. And if you want to get to like a singularity, if you want to get to a renaissance, it literally starts with the sound money currency. I mean, that's how the Medici did it with the florins. Like that's how you started the Renaissance. Is like they had a currency they did not debase or completely control for 400 years, and you got the Renaissance. So if you want to get back to that, that's the way you have to go. If you want to be like Germany and go back to the 1800s and have to go to like a football stadium to stay warm during the winter and eat the bugs and the crickets and all that, that's one option. But if you want to move to a renaissance, it starts with a sound money standard, and you have to become an advocate for that. You have to share that. So please share these videos, please share these ideas, please discuss this with your friends, family, brothers, sisters, etc. Because the solution is that one dude in high school that you didn't like, we should remove them from our society. That's what needs to happen. Peace.